Welcome to the Bend Don't Break podcast. We are powered by The Source, Bend's locally owned media company and weekly newspaper. This podcast is our eddy in the rushing waters of local journalism. We are glad that you're taking some of your time to listen to us chat with the people who shape our local community. Support us through our member program at bensource.com.
Thank you to our presenting sponsor, RE/MAX Key Properties, a family-owned full-service real estate brokerage specializing in residential, luxury, commercial, new construction, and ranch and land properties. Their new state-of-the-art facility at 42 Greenwood Avenue is a modern, collaborative space and the new home of the Bend Don't Break podcast recording studio.
I'm Aaron Switzer, publisher of The Source and producer with Megan Burton behind the camera of this fine podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We have David Bermudez, a.k.a. Bermy, Executive Director of the Bend Science Station. David Bermudez is the founder, where he has spent more than 2 decades expanding access to hands-on, curiosity-driven STEM education across Central Oregon. Since launching the organization in 2002, he has grown the Science Station to a thriving nonprofit that serves over 5,000 students and 200 educators every year. In addition to leading programming, David played a key role in building the Science Station's net zero lab facility on the OSU campus, designed to expand access to high-quality lab experiences, especially for students who might otherwise have them. Lifelong educator with a degree in aquatic biology from Brown, David is known for making science unforgettable, like jumping into an ice bath to demonstrate vasoconstriction, or letting students hoist him up a building tower using a pulley system. Also mentored to fellow educators and community builders who have cultivated a passionate team of instructors, volunteers, and supporters committed to making STEM accessible, engaging, and fun. Did we capture it?
You got it.
I nailed it?
You nailed it. I don't even need to be here. Send my AI clone in here.
David, before we jump into all the stuff that Bend Science Station, for listeners, when did you move to Bend? When did you get here?
I arrived in 1993.
Oh, well, yeah.
I was teaching at Sunriver Prep School.
Okay.
So way back when it was in Sunriver.
Yeah.
I lived on Huntington Road, which is like 2 miles, like right by Lapine State Park Road.
Yeah.
Way out down south.
In the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of
when it was still L.A. Pine.
Yeah, exactly. So
did what brought you here? I mean, was it that job?
It was.
Yeah.
Like I was teaching at OMSI at the Marine Science campus.
Okay.
And it just happened that the principal's wife from Sunriver Prep at the time was came out to the Camp Guanalong, and I was working with that group because I had a strong background in marine science, and they happened to let me know that they were losing their science teacher, and I applied and ended up here.
You're from back east or Midwest, and why Oregon? Why OMSI?
Why Oregon? Why OMSI? Like every story, I was following a girl.
Those are the best stories.
Exactly. Kind of made my way west after college out east. I was done with my time out east. Too many people, and not enough snow. And taught skiing in Colorado for 2 years, and that ended up with my girlfriend at the time got an internship at Catton Gable School, so that brought us out to Oregon. And I was like, first jobs trying to help pay for tuition. I think I was pruning trees in Lake Oswego, delivering pizzas for Domino's. Then that led into, teaching marine science camps at Camp Guanalong for OMSI.
I mean, Sunriver Prep, for telling some ancient history here, I mean, it was a pretty good hotbed of intelligent people. Am I correct? I mean, a lot of the people who went on to do great things in Central Oregon were there at Sunriver Prep.
What's interesting about that whole scenario is, they had that academy system set up. That was kind of predates me, but they had the ski academy prior to MBSEF. And the enrollment at Sunriver Prep was huge. They were drawing kids from all over the West to the ski academy. And then Trish King had the theater academy going. So, they had morning classes, and then afternoon they were off doing their specialties. And and I think that I arrived when that was all sort of phasing out. But still a really interesting place of smart people, educators in interesting scenarios.
Yeah, Tanya Ignacio, who was our first editor, she came out of Sunriver Prep at the time, and so I was regaled with all of the brainiacs, and we had a lot of them writing for us, and
That's funny.
we were hiring some of them as it was, falling apart, and people were moving on to other endeavors.
I won't ever forget when, my first paycheck bounced, though.
Right. Yeah, it was that kind of place, right?
Exactly. But I also, some of the best relationships I have with instructors. I mean, I met Tim Green and Bill Herman and Becky Erickson there, and they're still some of my closest friends.
Yeah.
Some of the people in lots of mayhem.
So from Sunriver Prep, how do you get from there to starting a science station? And then you could have just been a science. Was it a girl?
Again, it was a girl.
Those are the best
I went up
stories.
to Portland. It's the same girl, actually. But I went to Portland and taught at OES for 4 or 5 years and got really invested in kind of at OES. There was a primary focus on independent research and getting kids to be able to actually conduct science to learn it.
Yeah.
And when I looked at moving back to the Central Oregon area, the idea of setting up a space that focused on that for a whole community, as opposed to just for the people who can pay for it.
Yeah, right.
That's sort of where the birthplace of that idea, and I kind of ran that by Jay Barman, who's been my mentor forever, and he was like, let's make it happen. And
that's great.
That's how that transition happened.
Did you know Jay from your time down in Sunriver?
Yeah, he would show up randomly with, a bat that had been, caught in a snowstorm. And that's one of my particular favorite stories. It had the bat. He brought it in. We thought it was dead. It was in the lab. The kids were looking at it, and it came out of hibernation and was like flying through the room in these figure eights. And all the kids were like on the floor, and actually, like, the Kerr girls were in that class, Donald Kerr and
from the High Desert Museum.
Yeah, and we ended up crawled over to get a net and caught the bat as it was flying through, and that was always Jay was always dropping in with different ideas.
So when you were in Portland, you reached out to Jay to tell him you were coming back and this is what you wanted to do? And he gave you guys crafted the business plan together? Pretty much.
Yeah. Like, I think I registered the name, bensciencestation.org and com, and then I was like, we're doing this, we're coming home. I mean, literally it was right after 9/11, and it's kind of interesting. I didn't think about it at the time, but I quit my job within 3 months of that, or gave my notice at OES, and knew I was coming back here, sort of registered the domain names and called Jay and said, do we think we can make this happen? And he was like, when you get down here next, I want you to meet this guy, John Leahy. And they were running out of the Chandler building. U of O was running their extension services programs there. And so we met up with him, and they weren't using the lab space. Yeah. We cleaned it up, and that's sort of the origin story of the science station.
That Chandler space, that is a funky space. It's like, that's what, I mean, I don't know the official name for it. I just know the weird science space up on Aubrey Butte. Yeah. But it's in with all the housing.
Do you know the whole story?
I'd like to know more. I mean, full disclosure, my kids participated in the science station the whole time they were growing up, and it was always in that building. And I was like, how did one get connected? Because you weren't part of the school. You were just using the facility.
Yeah, and then at the time, we were leasing it from the U of O, so we were subleasing from them. Yeah. But it's COS, and then U of O kind of had to leave when there was reorganization at the higher ed level, and then we were directly leasing from COCC, and they were awesome for us. But like, the whole building was owned by the Forest Service originally, and the park next to it, that Hillside Park, and that was all gifted when timber sales went down. This is my understanding of it, and in the 70s and 80s, then those buildings were gifted to COCC for $1. I think there's something. I think it took an act of Congress to actually make it happen. And then, but I think the reason it's still there is that it's required to maintain educational.
Yeah. Who uses it now?
It's extension, I believe, if it's still the case, it's extension classes for COCC, non-credited classes.
Yeah. So you went on, I mean, I know it was at a certain point, you couldn't stay.
Right. There was there was always it was the gorilla, the 600-pound gorilla in any organization's corner when you're leasing.
Right.
It was sometimes they wanted us to take more space, sometimes it was less space. And back in the at 2008, the whole economic implosion or the recession, lots of registrations at the community college.
Yeah,
they used space, and so at that point they were like, "You guys need to go," and we were like, "You need some time. We got to figure this out." And they were great. Matt McCoy and the crew over there worked with us, and Lisa and I set to the task of raising $3 million and being able to build our building on the OSU Cascades campus.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, if it's kind of nice to look and put two pictures up of what the facilities were to what the facility is.
Yeah, I mean,
is
we have the
today.
community to thank for that. I mean, everybody stepped to the plate.
Yeah.
I mean, as a nonprofit, we feel pretty fortunate that we're sitting in a situation where we have no rent, we have a giant solar array, we have no utilities. I mean, when COVID hit, we're like a brick and mortar place that's not really a brick and mortar place.
Yeah.
And we were able to still change what we're doing without students coming and not have to worry about what our lease, our utilities, and how we're going to make it all work. So we feel fortunate.
Look, but maybe we should back up a little bit and just talk about ScienceSation itself. I mean, talk about the programs as they exist today. What do you do?
All right. So like you mentioned a little bit, but like with a staff of 5, 2 of which are sort of in the admin and development direction, which includes my wife and Kevin, we teach 5,000 kids a year and 200 teachers. And that's from across Central Oregon. That's as far out as Paisley, you name it. Like, we get folks coming from French Glen to predominantly in Deschutes County though. And our goal is just to help the community raise the bar on science education and I guess with a primary focus on not just science content, but science process. How to actually ask and answer your own questions. I mean, we're kind of under the primary belief or fundamental belief that every kid should have the ability to kind of question and discover and have the skills to do it. And so that's our primary focus.
Yeah, and I know given, and it's your OMSI background, but the classes are always very hands-on for being, young kids. They're experimenting. They're not textbook. This isn't a textbook flip the pages kind of science education.
And actually, I mean, you think about it, like comes from someone who kind of went through that process of, I was a kid who was great at memorizing things and learning content.
Lucky you.
And being able to go. And so science wasn't like horror to me. Like it is for many people, because that's, if you look back at your own science education.
It was a horror.
It was, I'm just saying, and so that with that in mind, the reality is when I got to college and they actually, and the game shifts a little bit if you want to stay in science, because it's not just about all the content that's out there. It's about how do you conduct your own experiments if you really want to do science. And so I kind of found that the skills that I had that I used when it got to that point where you shifted from I'm learning about science to I'm doing science. Most of the skills I was using, I learned when I was going to the Art Institute and taking classes in the Young Artist Institute and doing sculpture and dealing with creative problems and how do you stick these things to the wall because I need to hook all these granite rocks with these barnacles on them now that I'm a junior in college and I'm in Narragansett Bay. Those skill sets and the ability to solve those problems, they weren't taught to me in any science class. They were
in a book.
No, exactly. And so so that's our goal is the reality is this. I mean, if you want to have a great soccer player, you don't wait until high school to put a soccer ball on their foot, right? And if you want someone to speak a second language, you don't wait until high school to do that, right? And so waiting until high school to get a kid in a lab and have them run some experiments, even if they're cookbook experiments, is just waiting way too long.
I know there's probably people who are listening who are like, well, don't they get this in school? I mean, let's say that their science education, even if they're not getting hands-on, they're supposed to be getting science education, but the trend has been fewer and fewer people taking science classes.
Yeah, and so that is true, and I think that the big piece to that is, I mean, when you look at our elementary schools, I mean, in general, and that's where we kind of need provide the most assistance at the science station itself. I mean, we assist at every level in terms of trying
But you assist most at the elementary level?
Most, because the reality is, let's just the math alone. Like, if you wanted to have science labs and specialist science teachers at elementary schools in Ben Lapine, I mean, there's 18 different elementary schools. So now you got to find 18 qualified teachers. You got to build 18 labs, and you have to have them be interested in actually teaching that science. And the reality is we don't get tested on science until 5th grade. So there's not a lot of incentives there. And most elementary teachers, they're incredible at what they do, but they don't have a lot of training in science. They don't have a lot of equipment, and they don't have budgets. And so all those factors, those hurdles, like really get in the way of that happening. So
that's where you guys come in.
That's where we come in. I mean, I think our goal is to knock down all those hurdles. And so whether it's our lending library or the teacher training that do, or the field trips that come to the science station, they're all focused on getting more science happening at an elementary level and getting people comfortable enough that they're willing to sign the gear out and take it home with them to their classrooms and do it there, right? And so,
I mean, all you really got to do is drop Mentos in a Coke bottle for elementary kids, and they're excited about science, right?
Do that, but then you could actually do an experiment and put them on an angle and see, like, hey, if I drill holes in the lids and they're different sizes, does the Coke go out different distances? Right. And that's actually what we try and get the kids doing, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, we'll give them the hand grip heart rate monitors and say, hey, here's how they work. What are some factors that affect heart rate?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you get 16 kids in a room coming up with factors, and then you vote them all down. The last group of kids that we had at the science station doing that, we cut off one of those wheels on a stool because they wanted to look at startling and its effect on heart rate. So they blindfolded each other. There was one leg off of the stool, and they got to drop that chair backwards, 3 times was the maximum in the minute. And then they were measuring their heart rate when they got to sit normally for a minute, or whether they were getting rattled, in terms of their drop reflex. I mean, but that's them. Kids take a lot of more ownership in science, and they get more engaged with it when they get to choose, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, we set the parameters to a degree, right?
Sure.
You're going to be measuring heart rate today.
Right.
But now you go.
They're dictating it.
And so the other ones wanted to see what would happen when you were combined in a small space. So we cleared out one of the cabinets and had the heart rate monitor thing going in, and they locked each other inside of the cabinets, and they're measuring their heart rate. I mean, that's real science.
Yeah,
and so.
Well, you get you get to see exactly what happens when you're pushed in the closet. I mean, and it happens.
Right, exactly. So yeah. And I mean, I think, you asked a little question, how the science station helps. I mean, when we started this thing, my assumption was, when I called Jay and I'd registered those domain names and stuff like that, my assumption was we were going to be weekend after school in summer.
Right.
That
is exactly what I would expect the science station to do if I didn't know any better. Because it's not core. You're not core. You're ancillary for those kids who are truly, motivated to learn more about science. But now you become core.
Yeah. And so what's interesting about that is what we found is that there's so much going on the weekends here, and this town is so sports motivated that we offered classes in the weekend, barely got registrations. And so the reality is we had no idea everybody was going to come to the lab during the day.
Yeah.
And thanks to folks like Lonza and Basics, they fund every 4th grader in the county coming to the lab each year as a class of 30, and then dividing and being in the lab and conducting experiments and getting a taste of what it looks like. And then obviously they can sign up for summer camps, and they can sign up for after school classes if they're interested.
Right.
Yeah. So
when you look at the landscape of education in Central Oregon and maybe further, what is the trend right now? Are your services, I mean, there's always a need, but is there more of a need as time is passing? Is there less? Because I don't see, even though it's like you were saying with the elementary schools, well, we'd have to get 18 teachers and we'd have to get them in 18 schools. And I'm like, well, yeah, get busy, start raising the tax base, start charging people, get that science back in there. But that's not the trend.
That's not the trend. I mean, you look at the funding schemes for education and it's the opposite direction. And, whether it's dollars for teacher training or whether in any of those. And so I think that the part that, the science station sort of happily fell upon is, if you take expensive science teaching resources and talent and you put them in one space and rotate a county through, all of a sudden something that is economically unattainable becomes attainable, right? Like you all of a sudden, it's got an economy of scale. And so that's like this happy sort of business place that we didn't set out to find, but we located.
But don't I need like 18 science stations? Fully?
I mean, you could get more of it, but I think that the reality is not every kid, kids love what we're doing, but not every kid's going there. Right. I mean, we see two things, right? Like we want our entire populace to be critical thinkers. And we think that the science process technique, like in the way you approach asking questions, that's a skill that everybody should have, irrespective of what direction they go. But like, when I look at our, like the way that we approach things, we hit every kid in the county at 4th grade. And those kids that want to do more, they access us. And we've got this Stuart and C. Malone Scholarship Fund to make sure that those that can't afford it still participate. Awesome. And ultimately, like, we end up with about 10 kids a year at the high school level who are proposing and conducting their own independent research projects that are like insane projects. We had a girl, right, that is like working with methogenic bacteria and growing them to see like what copper in their medium is going to make it so that when the unpermafrost, that we have some way of sucking up all that methane so we're not cooking down here.
Right.
So
you're talking about things nobody really comprehends.
Exactly. But it's still cool. But the reality is, I think that, I'm not sure that you need, 18 of them. Yeah. We may need more of them. Yeah. But not that. So
broadening the lens a little bit, science as a discipline, we hear all the time through social media, politics, so it gets devalued. I mean, is that a fair term, devalued, or it's being put in a place where it's like, yeah, it's science, but science is just theory.
Yeah.
And we don't need to follow that. I mean, carbon dioxide, what?
Yeah.
Methane. I mean, you were going to methane. We can't even scratch that.
Yeah, exactly. But so I guess what I'd say is this, like in general, I think that that the way that social media works, or anti-social media, whatever you want to call it, like the reality is, it puts us in our silos and it makes us harder to agree on a set of facts. The reality is that's problematic, right? And it seems like
when you're in the business of facts,
right? That's problematic for me, and it's problematic for us as a whole, right? And in general, like that ability for us to actually, as a group, agree on, even if it's just 80% of those facts, and use that to govern like how we decide to invest kind of a limited set of money,
right,
is important, right? And so those skills, and I actually think I'll bring it back to Science Station again, is that there's a lot of people who have big issues with being wrong. And I think wrong gets like a bad name. I mean, like we like to get kids to put down on record like what their hypothesis is. Right. And then when we come back to it and the data actually asks them to look at the data and go like, hey, actually what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. Yeah. I mean, like really wrong is surprised, or wrong is I learned something.
Right.
And like that skill set of like being able to attain some information, look at it, and then go back and think and look back at what your previous preconception was, and then like.
Yeah, I'd say that's getting increasingly difficult.
That's increasingly difficult, and it gets even more difficult when we don't even agree on the same set of facts. Right. And so that wedge, that's a problem, and a lot of people would like to keep it. In my opinion, would like that wedge to be there, because solutions to problems they're challenging, they're expensive, but we're not even going to go and try and approach them if we can't agree on what the problem is.
Do you find that, I mean, you've got to have had some freakouts where people are confronted with the fact that they were wrong.
Yeah, I mean.
So where they have never actually been told, no, that's not right.
Oh, well, a good example would be like even at a young age, and I think we're programmed to this because I see at the third grade level when we used to have them make predictions about what the pH of different household chemicals is going to be.
Yeah.
And we had a little challenge and at the end to see who was closest. I had to start having them write in different colored pencils because they'd go back to try and change them. And this is at third grade. So like, because they didn't want to be
right.
wrong.
I actually wrote that was the true.
I know. No, they go back and they're just adjusting the facts post hoc. Like, and this isn't training, right? I mean, this is just
human nature.
And so the reality is our ability to get to a place where we can, it affects all aspects of our life, right? But like, wouldn't we all be in a better place if we could all go to a certain, situation where I thought this was the way it was. I look at this information and you know what? I'm comfortable with being like, dude, actually, I am actually good with the fact that what I thought was going to happen wasn't.
Right.
I tell the kids all the time, I'm like, my favorite experiments, the ones that the research kids do where I literally have no idea what's going to happen because if you're letting them ask the questions at the high school level, you're learning alongside them. I love the ones where I'm like, I think this is going to happen. That's my best guess. Yeah. And then, because I know that I've learned something, I'm surprised. It's like, I'm in a better space. Like, it's like, that's real growth, right?
Yeah. I love the bumper sticker. Don't believe everything you think.
Right. It's exactly it. Like, that's all it is. Like, and so, yeah. So, I think that, the reality is you can take any one of the alphabet soups that we presently have in our nation, whether it's the NIH, the NS, NOAA, NASA, all of them, we're proposing to cut funding by significant amounts, right?
What's the goal right now? The federal administration's goal is to reduce the number of those acronyms that exist.
Right. And one has to wonder. I mean, I think one of the ones that struck me the most was, partly because I have a son that's at the University of Miami, but when it's proposed to cut the flyovers of the hurricane hunters, like fly times over, it was originally supposed to be fly about 500 hours a year in hurricanes and drop the sensors that allow us to predict where they're going to go. The reality is they're talking about cutting that by 50%. Now, Congress did step up and stop that, but think about that. A hurricane, if you don't predict where it's going to go, I promise you it doesn't care whether the people that live in the houses are Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, or whatever. They're all hosed. Right. If the prediction is right. And so that's a perfect example where we invest our dollars and is.
Well, we were chatting right before we jumped on this podcast about the 16-year experiment over in Hungary, and along these similar lines of just like, hey, if I just get rid of the people who are telling me what I got to do or things I don't want to know, it'll get better.
Yeah, I mean the urbanization of Hungary, if you want to look at it that way, you've got a 16-year experiment which just came to an end by significant margins, right? It's a 2/3 majority of the new party that came in, but that the Hungarian Institute of Science was pretty much dismantled during the time period of that 16 years. Colleges funding was
that entity was world renowned. I mean, it's not like they cut just like the University of Pennsylvania or something.
No, exactly. And so and the ultimate results, and you can see it, are you had a brain drain from Hungary. You had innovation stagnated. They have the worst economy in the European Union, and the reality is that it all comes from not wanting to hear inconvenient truths, or at least even look at inconvenient facts.
Right.
So,
how long do you think it's going to take them to revitalize their science programs? I mean, 16 years to dismantle. How long to fix that?
My God, longer than that. That's I could tell you. Longer than 16, I would guess. Because it just, there's so much that has to get put back into place. Yeah. Right?
It's incredible because before we were talking, I mean, obviously, I think about Hungary in terms of what it did to the media and the nationalization of the media and that playbook. So my focus was there. I hadn't even thought about the eradication of their science infrastructure, which never makes any sense to me when I see these wars, even here with trying to defund blue chip institutions like Harvard and Yale and those guys. It boggles my mind that there's some kind of like program behind it that we're all going to be better served by.
Right. It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Right. When it all comes down to it, is that, you know, you look at, I mean, the playbook that, you know, is, you know, presently being used in this country is taken right from
Hungary,
and,
for sure.
And like on the media level, on the science level,
right,
on the collegiate university level as well. So, I mean,
well, it's nice when the science experiments close, because now you have a record. You can see it from the start to the conclusion. And being a good scientist like you can draw conclusions from that.
And no party has a sort of, I would just say, like a monopoly on stupid.
Right.
I mean, sorry, but, you know, look at up in Portland. I mean, some of the choices that were made, and actually in the state, we did it statewide. We voted for legalization of drugs, right?
Right.
And the reality is that experiment was run in Amsterdam in the 70s, and it took them 50 years to dig out of that hole.
Yeah. Yeah, thankfully we have my editors right now over in Spain, right? And writing a book on that very, very process. In a way, she's a scientist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the reality is, like, all of us, actually, it's Jay Barman who I first heard this from, is like, you know, I can't remember when he would ask this of students that come to the Sunriver Nature Center. It was like, when did you stop becoming a scientist? Like, when did you stop observing the world, testing, thinking critically, and adjusting? Because we're born that way. Yeah. Right? We come out the chute and, you know, right, all the time. Right. And at some point, you stopped, right? Like, or the education system you're working in didn't promote it or whatever. And so, like, the reality is, from my perspective, it's like the science station, we're trying to like develop those skills and push kids towards, you know, that have that, you know, inclination, but not just the ones that are going to go into science, but whatever you're going to do. Right. Like, ability to be a critical thinker is like...
I've got a new thing to think about during my therapy session is, when did I stop becoming a scientist and start believing everything I was thinking? Like, that's just wrong. And I haven't run any real experiments. I just know it to be true.
And then you stopped when you saw that bumper sticker.
That's right. And I was like, that's it.
Don't believe everything.
I do believe it all now. I'm not a scientist, so... Well, David, we are at the end of our podcast time. I appreciate you coming in. Is there anything you want to say to listeners, viewers, peeps who are tuning in that we might have missed?
Oh, just don't believe everything you think you know.
I like that. And go and read up more on Hungary. I certainly am now that the experiment is over. Yeah. So... Well, this has been the Bend Don't Break podcast. Appreciate you tuning in. If you like what you heard, go to bensource.com, click on the donate button, become a member, do a one-time donation, give something so that we can continue to disbelieve things we already were believing before with people like Bermie at the science station. And if your kids are not participating in science station classes, you're really missing out. It was a really incredible part of my kids' development here in Bend, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
You've been listening to the Bend Don't Break podcast, powered by The Source Weekly. To read, hear, and see more of what we do, go to bensource.com.